Thank you very, very much. It is, I hope that you and your families are safe, and I wish you all well. It is a privilege for me to teach, to lecture to you, to speak to you at Roxbury Latin. I know the reputation of the school. It is one of the finest schools in the United States. You should be very proud to be a student there. Your faculty, your administrators are absolutely superb. So let me begin. I'm talking to you about the Holocaust. The historiography on the Holocaust is voluminous. I have to pick my shots as to what I'm going to speak to you about. So I begin with causation, but I must caution you once again that this is not mathematics. This is not physics. You cannot say in history A plus B produces C. You look at the evidence, you look at the data, you look at the memoir literature, you look at the documentation, and you make informed hypotheses. This is the best that you can do. I'm not the prophet from upstate New York. I'm not the prophet from Union College. I'm not telling you I don't have a monopoly on the truth. Take everything that I say, I must tell you, with a grain of salt, and never subordinate your reason. So let's begin. Where can we begin in discussing the causes of the Holocaust? I don't mean to offend anyone, but I think most historians would agree with me that the anti-Jewish sentiment in Western civilization begins with the emergence of Christianity on the historical scene. What I'm telling you is that the early church taught what was called the basic teachings of contempt. That is, Judaism at the time of the appearance of Jesus was spiritually bankrupt. The Jews worshiped the letter of the law and not the spirit of the law. Teaching number two, and the most important, the Jews are guilty of the greatest crime that has ever been perpetrated on the planet. Homicide is murder, it is terrible. Parricide, the killing of a parent, is worse than that. Regicide, the killing of a king, is even worse. But the Jews are guilty, according to the early church, and really to the church down until the 1960s with the Vatican II, the Jews are guilty of the greatest crime that has ever taken place. The Jews killed the Son of God. This is not the lecture in which, or not the talk in which I can talk to you about how today, even Christian as well as Jewish scholars deny Jewish complicity in the death of Jesus. But that's for another time. In addition to that, the belief that the Jews have been punished because they killed Jesus, and that's why the temple was destroyed, and the Jews have been really thrown throughout the rest of the world to build the birth of the diaspora. In reality, none of these things happen to be actually accurate. But again, as I tell my students in the first day of every class at Union, perception is reality. It's not what is important in history, what may in fact have happened. It's what people perceive what is important. That's what's important. What people perceive has taken place. So for hundreds of years, the Jewish position in a Christian Roman Empire is going to deteriorate. With the coming of the Crusades, it will really be even worse. There'll be massive attacks upon the Jewish population, and to use the Hebrew expression, the Jews will die al kiddush Hashem, for the sanctification of the holy name. When a people is held in contempt for a very long period of time, what develops is a folklore about that people. And the folklore about the Jews is very, very hostile. You see it in the woodcuts and the paintings of the medieval and the early modern period. The idea that the Jews have tails, the idea that the Jews have horns, that the Jews kill Christian boys and girls at the time of Passover and drain the blood from the body to bake the unleavened bread, the matzah. This is what is known as ritual murder. It is absolute nonsense, but thousands upon thousands of Jews will be killed, and even more Jews will be forced to leave their countries because of an eruption of anti-Jewish sentiment. So by the time we get to the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, and even beyond, anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish sentiment, I don't want to get into a semantic differentiation here, but hostility to the Jews is well embedded in Western civilization. Not even the emancipation of the Jews, beginning with the French Revolution on September 27th of 1791, not even the emancipation of the Jews is going to eliminate from Western civilization this antipathy, this hostility towards the Jews. The emancipation, in fact, in some ways will exacerbate the problem. For the first time, Jews are allowed out of the ghettos. The Jews can now enter the universities. The Jews can enter now into the professions. The Jews can enter into businesses. They can live in places where they were never allowed to live before. The competition between Jews and Christians even those who are non-believing Christians, is going to rise tremendously. It's like the Jews who are a coiled spring, held down for centuries. Now that they are free with everybody else, now that they get into the universities, they perform very, very well. There's no Jewish gene whatsoever. I'm not a racist. There's no Jewish gene that explains Jewish success. The fact of the matter is the emphasis upon literacy, particularly among males, the let us say, bilingual, trilingual, and quadrilingual ability of Jews, that is, they speak more than one language, is always an advantage. The fact that Jews live in other countries means that they have international connections. All of this is going to lead to a burst of Jewish success and envy and hostility on the part of indigenous populations. So here we are now in the 19th century. And in the 19th century, there are other things that will, let us say, make hostility to the Jews even worse. One is probably the most important of them all, is going to be a belief. And I tell my students this as well. You cannot understand anti-Semitism. You cannot understand a good deal of world history in the 20th century unless you factor in the appeal of communism and the hostility of people towards communism. I assume you are familiar with what I'm talking about. On the one hand, communism is atheistic. It opposes God, it opposes religion, it quashes religion, crushes religion. And it attacks private property. It attacks nationalism. It attacks a whole host of things that many people consider to be sacred. On the other hand, communism has appeal. It's talk about the end of discrimination. It talks about a more equal redistribution of wealth. In other words, I'm telling you that people by the end of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century are very, very caught up, either supporting communism and, again, opposing communism. The overwhelming majority of Jews were not communists, but a disproportionate number of the communists were Jews. So, for example, here's an old joke from the Soviet Union. Zinoviev, who is Jewish, Trotsky, who is Jewish, Kamenev, who is Jewish. They turn to each other and say, let's kick Lenin out and we'll have a minion. That is, we'll have a group of people that can pray. The fact of the matter is, these communist Jews or Jewish communists were deracinated. They had no allegiance to the Jewish people. They had certainly no allegiance to Judaism. And it doesn't make any difference. For those who suffered from communism, for those who, let us say, really grieved over communism, people who were religious, people who owned property, people who were fervent patriots, all of those people had lost as a consequence of the accession to power of the communists in the Soviet Union. I may be repeating myself, but I cannot exaggerate the importance of this. The chief rabbi of Moscow in 1912 put it very, very well. He said, the Trotskys play the tune, the Bronsteins pay the piper. Trotsky was a pseudonym. All those names I gave you before, they're all pseudonyms. Underneath them are traditional Jewish names. Trotsky's name was Bronstein. When he was asked in the 1920s, what are you, Comrade Trotsky? He answered, I'm a Marxist-Leninist. I'm a member of the international proletariat. Who the devil did he think he was kidding? In the eyes of large numbers of Russians and people all over the world, he was what in Russian is called a Zhid, a kaik. That's a pejorative term for Jews. So the linkage of Jews, the alleged linkage of Jews with communism is going to play an important role. Most historians who talk about the growth of anti-Semitism in the 20th century see World War I as the seminal event. In Germany, when the war started to go badly, Germans looked for a scapegoat. Now here I'm telling you something that I think significant, and perhaps I will come back to it again. Believe it or not, there's an intellectual coherence and beauty to anti-Semitism. I know what I am saying. I say it again, there's an intellectual coherence and beauty to anti-Semitism. That coherence and beauty in anti-Semitism explained by the ability of anti-Semitism to explain multi-causal phenomena in a monocausal way. I will say that again. The coherence of anti-Semitism is its ability to explain multi-causal phenomena in a monocausal way. When the war was over and Germany had lost, and Germany had been treated so harshly in the Treaty of Versailles, Germans want an answer. Why did we lose? In reality, the Germans lost for a variety of reasons. I'm sure you have discussed this with your teachers. But for many Germans, they wanted a single answer. And the answer was the Jews had stabbed us in the back. The fact of the matter, again, Germany was defeated on the field of battle. The British Empire was too strong. By January of 1918, 300,000 American soldiers were arriving in France each month. The fact, again, is going to be Germany was defeated on the field of battle. The German people could not accept it. They wanted to find out another reason, a scapegoat. And the answer was, die Juden sind unser Unglück, is the German expression. The Jews are our misfortune. The Jews stabbed us in the back. The fact that that revolution had broken out in Germany, a number of Jews were involved in the revolutionary movement, that led many Germans to believe the Jews had really betrayed our gallant soldiers at the front. In reality, once again, Germans had been defeated on the field of battle. Again, cause and effect is very difficult. Any discussion of foreign policy and the rise of Nazism and communism has to factor in the Depression. Listen to these figures. I'll move them very quickly. If you're taking notes, you don't have to take any notes on this. I just want to make the point to you. In 1928, 1 year before the Depression, the Nazis had received 800,000 votes out of 20 million cast, less than 20%, less than 5%, excuse me, of the vote. In 1930, 1 year after the Depression, the Nazis party received 6.5 million votes. And in 1932, the Nazis received 13,187,000 votes, 37.6%, a plurality of the popular vote. That's why on January 30th of 1933, not by violence, but through democratic or parliamentary means, Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, January 30th of 1933. Now, all of these things that I've said to you before, again, Christian anti-Judaism, again, World War I, the competition that Jews had with Germans and with other people, the envy that people had to the Jews, all of these things are important. Or to put it in another way, they are necessary, but they are not sufficient. I am among those historians. Not everybody would agree with me, and this is something you can discuss with your very fine teachers. I believe that you can never, never minimize the role of personality in history. I'll put it as simply as I can. No Hitler, no German, no Nazi accession to power. No Hitler, no Second World War. No Hitler, no Holocaust. Again, I am emphasizing the role of personality in history, particularly in this case. I am very much aware of the economic causation, of climate, of disease, of ideas, of economics and class. They are all important. No historian worth his or her salt would deny this. But this man, Hitler, who never got past the 10th grade, this man understood more than any other person in Germany. He understood what his people wanted. And one of the things that they wanted was the socket to the Jews. Although the studies that we have indicate, there were studies made in the 1930s asking Nazi people, Nazi rank and file people, why did you support Hitler? Why did you join the Nazi party? And most of them answered, we wanted a repudiation of Versailles. That is that harsh treaty, at least harsh as perceived by the Germans. We wanted someone to save Germany from communism. We wanted, again, an answer to the Depression. And Hitler seemed to offer that. Many of them also said, we want to settle accounts with the Jews. What they meant by settling accounts was not altogether clear in the 1930s. When Hitler comes to power, whatever the Nazi rank and file thought, for Hitler, the centrality of anti-Semitism, of hostility to the Jews, was absolutely tremendous. Again, this is the limitation of the historian. Sometimes I tell my students, some things in history are more within the realm of the psychoanalyst than they are of the historian or the political scientist. Hitler hated the Jews. No historian honestly can tell you why this took place. Nobody can tell you that. He hated the Jews to the point where he argued that everything bad that had happened to Germany throughout the thousands of years of German history could be laid at the doorsteps of the Jews. The Jews made Germany lose the war. The Jews were responsible for the terrible inflation of the 1920s. The Jews were responsible for the Depression. The Jews are behind communism. Hitler really believed that the Jews were an anti-race. In Hitler's crude social Darwinist view, it was race against race, and the Jews were the worst race of all. The German people could not be great again unless they were settling accounts with the Jews. By 1939 and 1940, Hitler is saying, Roosevelt may in fact have been a Jew. Hitler is saying that is not true. Hitler is saying that the Jews control Roosevelt, and that's why the United States is moving in the direction of war against Germany. Winston Churchill in the United Kingdom or in Great Britain, in the eyes of Hitler, Winston Churchill was controlled by the Jews, and the bombing of German cities by the Royal Air Force, by the RAF, this was a consequence of Jewish domination and Jewish influence. And by 1940, Hitler is changing his rhetoric. Before that, he was saying the Jews had done all these terrible things. By 1940, Hitler is saying, as I am speaking to you, the Jews are trying to destroy Germany. Therefore, it is time to settle accounts with the Jews. So, at the risk of repeating myself, I'm talking about the domination of personality here. No Hitler, no Holocaust. It is Hitler that drives the Holocaust forward. There's another phenomenon that is called marching towards the Fuhrer. In that phenomenon means that Hitler would give orders, as one German Nazi said before, even before the war in 1938. We know what our Fuhrer wants, and our job is to march towards the Fuhrer. We know that our Fuhrer wants to settle accounts with the Jews. We are going to provide the logistics. That's why on January 20th of 1942, in the Berlin suburb of Wannsee, in a villa, if you ever get to Berlin, make sure to go to the villa. It's well preserved and you can get a good tour. On January 20th of 1942, Reinhard Heydrich, the head of the Gestapo, the deputy head of the SS, together with Adolf Eichmann, these are the men that will plan the Holocaust, and they lay out the plans. They lay out the plans for mass shootings. They lay out the plans for the concentration camps. They lay out the plans for the already existing ghettos. So Hitler is he is very, very significant. Without him, there is no Holocaust. The Holocaust takes the form of, let's say, starvation and rape and murder. In Western Europe, Central Europe, East Central Europe, the overwhelming majority of Jews will be sent to the concentration camps and the 6 extermination camps in Poland. In the ghettos that will be set up, 20% of the Jewish population is dead by shooting, starvation, and disease even before the deportations to the camps takes place. In the German-occupied areas of the Soviet Union, this is what we call the Holocaust by bullets. Close to 2 million Jews in the Ukraine, in Belarus, in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and even in Russia itself, wherever parts of Russia that the Germans occupy, there will be special murder squads, killing squads. They are known in German as the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads. And as I said to you, within an 18-month period, they will kill almost 2 million Jews. The Jews are lined up, men, women, and children. Graves are dug by them. They are forced to undress, and then they are shot. There are worse atrocities than this, believe me. It is hard to say there are things that are worse than death. This is not the time to go into them. It would scare you, and it would, of course, upset your parents. This is mass murder. This is genocide. This is industrial mass murder. Now, there are many questions that we can ask about the Holocaust once the war begins. Let me address myself to one. There will be many people, even Jews at the time, who observed what was taking place, who said they went like sheep to the slaughter. That is, there was no Jewish resistance whatsoever. One of the great American historians, Ralph Hilberg, the man who really starts Holocaust historiography to all intents and purposes, a great historian though he was, is a man that really was not empathetic to the problems confronting the Jews in dealing with the issue of resistance. Suffice it to say, and I'll go over this very, very quickly, when one looks at the obstacles to resistance, one was astonished that there was any resistance whatsoever. So let me go in seriatim, as they say. Number one of the problems confronting Jews under the gun, living under German occupation, as well as Jews living in our own wonderful country, in the United States of America, there was a fundamental inability to believe what was taking place. People simply could not believe that in the middle of the 20th century, coming from that highly sophisticated and culturally sophisticated people, the Germans, that mass murder of the Jews could take place. That's item number one, a failure to believe. Number two, Nazi duplicity. The Nazis were very, very good at really deceiving the Germans. When the Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto are sent to the concentration camp, the extermination camp at Treblinka, what do they confront? They look through the slats of the railroad cars, they see a cafeteria, they see a ticket counter. They will all be dead in an hour and a half. In the end, Treblinka will murder about 900,000 Jews. Then there is the issue, of course, of obtaining weapons. Only in America can any idiot get a .22. In other countries, you cannot. And it's one thing to give weapons to people. The Jews have a hell of a time getting weapons and ammunition. It's another thing to know how to use them. You should be sympathetic to that. In many cities today, people are giving out, school superintendents are giving out computers to their students. They think that will solve the problem of online education. But how many people that are receiving those computers, how many know how to use them? That's a problem. The Jews, again, having a devil of a time getting weapons. And then there is, of course, the other issue. The war against the Jews was a pan-European phenomenon. In every country in German-occupied Europe, without a single exception, there were people who were prepared to join with the Nazis in the murder of Jews. For all of the reasons that we've spoken about, envy, the alleged linkage with communism, Christian antipathy to the Jews, all of these things were an issue. What it meant was, if the Jews wanted to resist, they were, for most part, for all intents and purposes, they were alone. They didn't stand a chance against the Nazis. Now, there are other things that we can discuss, and I hope we will discuss them with your teachers. Why didn't the United States do more before the war to take in Jewish immigrants? Why didn't the United States intervene? And there were ways that the Roosevelt administration could have intervened to save Jews. They chose not to do so. What was the reaction of the Roman Catholic Church? From 1933 to 1945, through Pope Pius XI and Pope Pius XII, there isn't a single mention in any papal address of German anti-Semitism and of the Holocaust. Nothing, not once. Why does the church take that position? If we had more time, we could discuss this. But this is some of the things that you should discuss with your teachers. And finally, are there any lessons that can be learned from all of this? Once again, I'm not the prophet from upstate New York and not the prophet from Union College. I begin by telling you lesson number one. Be careful of racism. Be careful of any form of discrimination, whether it is based on race, religion, gender, whatever it may be, ethnicity, class. Be very, very careful with this. The road to Auschwitz was paved by anti-Semitism. There's a lesson here. Be careful here. And as your headmaster has made very, very clear, there's a general rise in anti-Semitism. It probably is fueled by the statements by government officials, by, of course, let us say, some clergymen within our country. And in addition to that, there is what I told you in the beginning of my talk, the ability of anti-Semitism to explain multi-causal phenomena in a monocausal way. Why are we poor? Why is there AIDS? Why is there narcotics? Why is there a coronavirus? People are confused. They want an explanation, and some of them blame the Jews. Some of them are very, let's say, Machiavellian, very, very shrewd, very pragmatic. Blame the Jews for spreading all these terrible things, and you weaken the state of Israel. You weaken the American Jewish community. Lesson number two, a very important lesson. I wish he were a relative. His name sounds like me. This is Edmund Burke, the great British parliamentarian, who said, the only thing for evil to triumph is that good men remain silent. Never remain silent in the face of discrimination. Speak up. Don't turn away. It's not enough to turn away and give a shrug. You must speak up against any form of discrimination. A third thing is some of you will go into science and medicine. Science and medicine without ethics can lead to catastrophe. Some of the people who were responsible for the murder of Jews were some of the most sophisticated minds in Germany. Some of them had won the Nobel Prize. Some of them, one of them, in fact, a German physician, had been the head of the German Red Cross. Yet some of these people will participate in the murder. And the final thing I will say to you, I know we are running out of time, is to understand how we cheapen the word hero, heroine, and heroism. A great athlete, and I used to be, believe it or not, 50 years ago and 50 pounds ago, I used to be a jock. I love athletics. I love entertainment. Those great athletes, those great singers, they are great at what they do. They deserve everything that they have. They are not heroes and heroines. This is not heroism. You study the Holocaust, you study the Second World War. You know what heroes and heroism and heroine is all about. You're in a Higgins boat. A Higgins boat, these are the boats that brought the soldiers and the Marines to the beaches in the Pacific and to Omaha Beach on June 6th of 1944. When that sergeant in the Higgins boat says, ramp going down, 30 seconds, and you charge into that German fire in the Pacific, you charge into that German fire. You see the German bullets and you see the Japanese bullets skimming over the water. You see the artillery shells and you charge into that fire. That's what heroism is all about. The German penalty, the Nazi penalty for sheltering a Jew in German-occupied Europe is death for you, for your family, and the expropriation of private property. Who are the real heroes and heroines of the 20th century? Those non-Jewish men and women who, at the risk of their lives and their families' lives, sheltered Jewish men, women, and children. These people are heroes and heroines. And some of you may be the descendants of some other heroes. Jewish men and women in the period of the Holocaust and children saw things that no people should ever see in their lives. And yet, for the overwhelming majority of them, they will put their lives together. They will build new families, and they will be participating citizens in every country to which they go. These are the real heroes and heroines of the 20th century. Study the Holocaust well, my friends. Really study it. And nobody has a monopoly on the truth. And perhaps if we learn, and I've only given you some of the lessons, you can derive other lessons. Study the Holocaust well, and then maybe we can make the 21st century the best century that humanity has ever experienced.